Ah, yes, technology. We are technologically being separated and rejoined over vast differences. And that's the beauty of the way our current stage of evolution here on planet Earth is working. We can talk to each other from all points on the planet. And of course, some of us talk to each other from all points in the universe. You know, we've got a whole circle of people who are in dialogue with the star people and UFO drivers and all those people. So we've got a beautiful morning starting off here and a beautiful Memorial Day weekend lined up. So life is good in the hood. How are you guys this morning?
Great, Chris.
Doing good, doing good. So, you know, I think that's the symbol for all of our friends.
Yes, live long and prosper. And prosperity is a joyous thing. You know, that's one of the things that gets all crumpled up in our sensory experience of this world. We imagine that there is lack and limitation, and we're always worried about our prosperity. And you know, that's a burden that Jesus encourages us to cast upon his shoulders, because we are taken care of at all times. And, you know, we just have to be willing to accept that and allow life to unfold the way it's supposed to.
An expression that's been coming to me a lot over the last week is seek ye first the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah, I think that's really the golden rule. You know, I'm talking about do unto others as the golden rule, but
yeah.
For me, the golden rule undoubtedly is seek ye first the kingdom of heaven. And the other one I love is that idea of being completely consumed in love and having that experience of fully embracing perfect love. So if you have not been perfected in love, then you probably are aware of a lack in your life.
I was reading a section this morning in the course talking about, it's really talking about our belief in specialness and our belief in separation, you know, the affirmation of the separation with our belief in specialness. And there's this beautiful prose section in the course where Jesus is talking about our brother and recognizing our brother and recognizing him in love, recognizing him in oneness. And it just goes on for pages, and it's just a glorious section talking about just about that, the Christ in you. It's in chapter 24, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful section of prose. And one of the highlights in there for me is the Christ in you is very still. Christ looks only on the truth. Identify with him. You know, seek first the kingdom of heaven. Always be vigilant for God and his kingdom, right? Christ in you is very still. He is quiet. And then before your brother's holiness, the world is still. And it goes into this whole section that, you know, forget not that the healing of God's Son is all the world is for. That is the only purpose the Holy Spirit sees in it, and thus the only one it has. So this healing that we were talking about just before we came on air, before we went live here, is really what this is all about, isn't it? Changing that way we see things, perceive things, the way we think, and understanding that through our brother, recognition of Christ in our brother, that's the healing that takes place for us. We get that opportunity over and over and over again. There's no accidents. You know, we talk about nobody showing up in our lives by mistake. You know, everybody's there so we can recognize them as the Son of God.
Yeah, I like that there are no accidents in salvation. This idea that basically everything that unfolds in our life is exactly what we need in order to do our healing work. So, you know, one of the things that we shift out of as we study the course is this idea of being a victim, or the idea that victimization is even possible. We actually are shifting out of this whole concept, because we get more and more that we are not the figure in the dream. We are the dreamer of the dream. And as the dreamer of the dream, we can't feel victimized by the dream that we're dreaming up, right? It's coming from our own mind, not our individual mind, but from our collective mind. And because of that, we just really, there's no way to be a victim of something. If we wrote a story and the story had characters in it who were struggling, they were suffering, maybe they were even dying, we wouldn't feel like we're the victim of that story because we're the ones writing it. And similarly, that's the shift that we're asked to go through here is, what is our identity? Our identity, again, it seems to be this person that's going through this world and living all these experiences. But we're actually the maker of the whole story. And because of that, all of a sudden, we find that there's a gentler and smoother way that we can move through our lives here. And it definitely takes some practice and it takes persistence to step into this mindset. But that's what we're asked to do again and again and again throughout the course.
Very true. And one of the things that's interesting is, you know, the ego does have its seductions. And a lot of times I encounter people who imagine themselves to be astonishingly enlightened, fully awake. And after I listened to them for a while, I realized, oh, they've just shifted gears. They're just falling into another dream. And in lesson number 140, in that third paragraph, it says, the happy dreams the Holy Spirit brings are different from the dreaming of the world. Where one can merely dream, he is awake. And how many people are out there putting out messages and pounding the sidewalks and trying to convince us and rally us and form us into an army of little soldiers marching for their particular truth. The truth is that we have to be very alert to the subtle nature of the ego. And it is inclined to try and take everything that we encounter and use it against us. This paragraph goes on with, the dream's forgiveness lets the mind perceive, do not induce another form of sleep. So forgiveness is the key here. You know, if you've got an avatar that you're following who is practicing some sort of justice, which is another word for revenge, then you can pretty much discount them as being who they claim to be. So that the dreamer dreams another dream. So forgiveness alters that inclination to just fall from one dream into another dream into another dream. His happy dreams are heralds of the dawn of truth upon the mind. So when we begin to perceive a different world around us, when we are seeing less darkness and more light in the world, then we're pretty much guaranteed to be on the right path. They lead from sleep to gentle waking so that the dreams are gone, and thus they cure for all eternity. And that's the beauty of the way it finally resolves itself, is it's a very gentle and very natural unfolding. So if you're being rallied by people, if you feel that desire to go out and start a revolution, then you've been seduced. You are back into another dream, and that dream is going to give you what your ego desperately needs, which is you'll be the hero of that dream. So we do have to be constantly aware and alert as to what our inclinations are and what we are in pursuit of.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that this awareness you're talking about is really what we're always practicing, right? You could say that the Course is actually a practice of coming back to ourselves again and again. That the ego wants us to be mindless. The ego wants us to not realize that we have a choice, that we can awaken to this truth that we are. And that's why it's it's kind of slippery, right? The ego is a very slippery thing because it's always wanting us to sort of grab onto another story, another dream, another idea, another thing here in the world that's going to be our salvation. And the problem is that it never works, right? I mean, we try another job, we try another relationship, we try another car, another house, we try this and that, hoping that this is going to be the one, hoping that this is going to be the thing. That once we get this, all of a sudden we're going to be happy. And maybe the happiness lasts for an hour, maybe it lasts for a day or a week, but at some point that happiness always fades. And it's replaced again with the sense of not having enough. And the Course is asking us to start to wake up and to shake free of these chains that have bound us. I was just sharing a little bit of a different section in chapter 20 that really alludes back to Plato's story of the cave, which is that great message that we're not really seeing the truth. We're only seeing a shadow. We're only seeing a reflection of what's really happening. And we can go beyond that. This paragraph says, prisoners bound with heavy chains for years, starved and emaciated, weak and exhausted, and with eyes so long cast down in darkness they remember not the light, do not leap up in joy the instant they are made free. It takes a while for them to understand what freedom is. So as the light starts coming in, we can be even a little afraid of it rather than really glad and happy. He continues, you groped but feebly in the dust and found your brother's hand, uncertain whether to let it go or to take hold on life so long forgotten. Strengthen your hold and raise your eyes unto your strong companion in whom the meaning of your freedom lies. So he's basically saying we have all the help that we need if we are willing to say yes to it. And that's our work, really. Our work is saying yes to this help that's always offered to us. And we just start getting a little bit better and a little bit better at this. And I will also say it's not a linear path, right? We sort of have our progressions, our times where we're really open and feeling great, and then we kind of feel like we backslide, and then we're stuck in fear again. We sort of bounce back and forth, but overall what happens is we start spending more and more time in that state of happiness, in that state of trusting spirit, so that there is this overall progression. And that's our real salvation. That's the real cure that we're talking about in this workbook lesson, is how do we cure our mind of this false idea that somehow we're on our own and we're alone and we're vulnerable. So it's a worthy goal for us to pursue, because it's really the only thing that leads us to the true, deep, endless happiness that we deserve.
Yeah, there's a great line in that section, in that lesson, guys, down in the 5th paragraph, just below where you were reading before. God abides in holy temples. He is barred where sin has entered. Yet there is no place where he is not, and therefore sin can have no home in which to hide from his beneficence. There is no place where holiness is not, and nowhere sin and sickness can hide. And then the next sentence in the next paragraph, this is the thought that cures, right? No place where holiness is not, and nowhere sin and sickness can abide. So that teacher, that guide, that as you were talking about, Chris, this recognition of atonement, that Jesus had, that is the Christ, it's always present for us. It's always there, and it's Barret touched on it just a moment ago when he used the word willingness. It's just that willingness in the cave to reach out to our brother's hand, willingness to forgive our story that there is some separation, that allows us to start to see this light and understand that this help is always there. And we are, just so blessed to be in this place of starting to understand this, starting to grok it, right? And starting to live that instead of really what you're touching on there, right? Starting to live that way instead of the old way, where the ego wanted to just reinforce separation constantly. Now we have an opportunity to see oneness constantly.
Well, and it's all a matter of acceptance, because everything has already been done. That's the interesting aspect that a lot of people fail to factor in over and over and over again. This next section down here in lesson 140 reads, "Peace be to you who have been cured in God and not in idle dreams." And previously they were talking about medicine and hypnotherapy and chiropractic and all these other different modalities that people utilize within the dream to try and cure the body. And here it says, if you are cured in God, then you really are healed, or your body really is healed, and your mind has been healed. It goes on to say, for cure must come from holiness, and holiness cannot be found where sin is cherished. God abides in holy temples, and we are the temple of God. So to the degree we embrace our holiness, because our holiness in truth has never been defiled. We've only had this mad idea of separation from God, which would defile the temple that exists within us. But that is a complete and total farce. But the ego definitely is invested heavily in that mindset. It says, he is barred where sin has entered, yet there is no place where he is not. So we've got an interesting little paradox going on here. Even though you may believe that you have cast God out of his home within you, the truth is that never happened, because there is no spot where God is not, as Mary Baker Eddy so profoundly illuminated her crowd with the Christian Science movement. And once we begin to really look at that, when you arrive on the scene of a car wreck, when you arrive on the scene of a murder, when you arrive on the scene of all of these different horrific events the world is trying to present to us, we can know for a fact that we are encountering illusion, because in truth, there is no place in consciousness or in existence that God does not occupy. So that really pushes things up. It's almost like when you get a splinter and you get a little bit of fluid in there underneath the splinter to help you, to assist you in pushing that splinter out and extracting it. Well, that's kind of the process we have to go through, is to realize that the splinter of a thought of a place where God does not exist is simply, a minor distraction, and we can push that out and eliminate it, get rid of it. It says, and therefore sin can have no home in which to hide from his beneficence. So God's beneficence is everywhere, and sin is always on the run. That's why we're conditioned to understand that sin doesn't exist in the moment. It's merely a fragment of the past or an anticipation of the future. But in truth, whenever you are 100% present in the moment, you are one with God, and no sin exists there. It says, there is no place where holiness is not, and nowhere sin and sickness can abide. So what a profoundly beautiful and revolutionary mindset is being presented to us here. And we can, in fact, experience this with ease, and all we have to do is come to a place of stillness and allow the moment to reveal itself to us.
Oh, man, I just love the synchronicity of all this. You're reading in 140, lesson 140, and where I'm reading this morning is in chapter 24. Where could your peace arise but from forgiveness? The Christ in you looks only on the truth and sees no condemnation that could need forgiveness. He is at peace because he sees no sin. She just said, identify with him. And what has he that you have not? He is your eyes, your ears, your hands, your feet. How gentle are the sights he sees, the sounds he hears. How beautiful is his hand that holds his brothers, which you were talking about in the cave, right? How beautiful is his hand that holds his brothers, and how lovingly he walks beside him, showing him what can be seen and heard, and where he will see nothing, and there is no sound to hear. You know, so the Christ in the beginning of this whole section is the Christ in you is very still, which is exactly what Chris just mentioned. You know, in this stillness, we find this peace. In this stillness, we recognize our oneness. We know our atonement. You know, we are experiencing our being as opposed to the creations of the ego story. You know, there's a great line. Also, I flipped over to this Guide to Salvation in chapter 5. You know, everything of which the Holy Spirit reminds you is the direct opposition to the ego's notions, because true and false perceptions are themselves opposed. The Holy Spirit has the task of undoing what the ego has made. You know, so we have this opportunity in this recognition, in this knowing now, to understand that all we need do on a repetitive basis is go to Holy Spirit and ask for that help, ask for that guidance, ask for that understanding. And as it's saying back in the later chapter, Jesus is always there. Holy Spirit is always there. The memory of God is always present in us to aid us on our journey, aid us on our path, to get back, like you guys are talking about, to where we never left. We were talking about this earlier. You know, we've never truly left heaven. It's just a mad, crazy idea that we have, and we can be reminded of that over and over and over again with every buddy we meet, every brother we come in contact with.
Yeah, and that's the practice, right? We just practice that remembering, and we practice that remembering, and we practice that remembering. We notice that we've forgotten, we've taken the ego's hand again, and we very gently and very lovingly say to ourselves, that's really not what I want. You know, what I want is happiness. What I want is peace. What I want is to remember that you're always with me, God, that you're always with me, Jesus. So one of the important qualities of practice with this is persistence. You know, there's going to be days where it feels like we hardly remember to think of the truth at all. And then there are going to be days where we feel very much in that deep connection. And really all we need to do is just keep going. We just need to keep going, because the ego has no real power over us, right? For all that we talk about, you know, the ego and this thought system of fear and challenge, the ego has no power over us. The ego only has the power that we give it. And you could say that everything that we're doing is learning to withdraw that belief that we've given to the ego. And the more that we stick with that, the less the ego, you know, is appealing to us. The less there's an attraction to guilt, right? One of that great section in the Course called the attraction of guilt. It doesn't say the fear of guilt or the aversion to guilt. It says the attraction to guilt. Jesus is telling us that on a deep subconscious level, we want to be guilty, right? And that section that I was just reading about the prisoners bound with heavy chains, right? Once we get these ideas, you know, consciously we would think, oh, I just want to let go of all the fear. I just want to let go of all the ego, and I want to know my reality in heaven forever. But what's our experience usually? Oh, maybe we have a little bit of that opening enlightening. And then what? Oh, we run back into the cave again. We want to hang out with our buddies who are chained down there a little bit. What's that?
Keep looking down.
Right. Yeah, we keep looking down rather than up. Yeah. We look. We pull the hood back over our face so that we're in the dark again. But we start to get more and more that we're the ones pulling the hood over, and that we can also then pull the hood back and open up to the light. So it really starts to empower us, and eventually that becomes our greatest strength, our greatest gift, that we know that it's up to us to make this choice.
It's all a process of recognizing when we are creating a dependence on some object or some idea that disempowers us, that makes us a victim. You know, and victimhood is something that the ego relishes. We are always victims. I talking to a couple of people the other day, and they were talking about, oh, look at all the chemtrails, and there were like 12 or 14 streaks across the sky. And I said, do you guys believe in science? And he said, oh yeah, we're all on board with science. They said, you know, when you take 1300 degree air and blast it out into 40 below zero temperatures with condensation, that, you know, these little specks of environment, you will create a trail. It is not the government spraying death from the skies, you know, and they just stared at me, and I could see that it didn't get through. It's like they couldn't hear that because they were so invested in being the victim of the government. And we have to look around and survey our territory and figure out where we're practicing victimhood, and then draw that into the light. You know, a little bit further down in this section, it says, so do we lay aside our amulets, our charms and medicines, our chants and bits of magic in whatever form they take. And whenever you are embracing the idea that there is an external force that has power over you, you have kind of sealed the coffin shut. You have decided to embrace death instead of life. It goes on to say, we will be still and listen for the voice of healing, which will cure all ills as one. And once again, we're given that idea. There is only one problem. It may be showing up in 1,000 different formats, but there's only one problem. Restoring saneness to the Son of God. No voice but this can cure. So all these voices in your mind about chemtrails and all this other silly things that we embrace, we have to be willing to put that on the sacrifice list and let go of it. Today we hear a single voice which speaks to us of truth, where all illusions end and peace returns to the eternal, quiet home of God. And that is that altar within us where God dwells. That is our life itself. So we really have to be, you know, willing to look at the idea that being sane and rational means that we are willing to give up any concept of culpability, of invulnerability, or vulnerability, not invulnerability, or any of the other forms of a flawed sense of self that we seem to cherish so much. So it is challenging and daunting at times, but ultimately when you come out of the cave, you're looking around going, damn, look at that blue sky and no chemtrails.
I love that part that you were just reading there, Chris. You know, no voice but his will cure. You know, this clear, it's a real clear message that, you know, this, as you were just talking about, all these stories that we make up, all the amulets that we want to use, all the idols that we create, you know, none of them have any effect at all. They're all totally meaningless. But there is a single voice that all of us have inside of us that we can tune to. It's, as I pointed out earlier, you know, very still, very quiet, but we can find that spot with that willingness that Barret touched on early in our recording today. You know, we just need to be willing over and over and over again. You know, just practice that willingness. You know, and every time we have a little hiccup, we find ourselves starting to appreciate an idol or pursue an idol or believe in an idol. You know, go back to Holy Spirit and recognize it. I shouldn't say go back to, because it's really just awaken to the Holy Spirit inside of us, and and go to that teacher. You know, that clarity is always going to be given to us. You know, and it might not be instantaneous. It might come later on, but we can't ask and not be helped. That's the beautiful, beautiful thing about this relationship. You know, we are one. We are that being. We are the Christ, and we will awaken in truth, because that's all there is.
Yeah, this is an inevitable journey that we're taking. It's inevitable that we're going to wake up in the truth, in that love, in that oneness, in that wholeness. And that's one of the beautiful reassurances that Jesus gives us throughout the course, is that we can't miss, right? And we can delay, we can drag our feet, as we were saying, drag our mind a little bit before we started the day. We can try to put the brakes on, but we're on an inevitable journey to our destination. And our destination is, why is it inevitable? Because we're actually already there in truth, right? We've never left heaven. We've just had this thought that we have. So all we're doing is we're clearing what's false away from what is true. And we can't lose what is true. We can only lose what is false. So as we bring all of this, all of our experience, all of our thoughts over to that inner guide that helps us with all of this, whether that's Jesus or Holy Spirit or even some other symbol, we have that journey unfolded for us one step at a time. And we just have to take whatever the next step is. And what does that mean? It means that we do our work on whatever's showing up in our life. What's the situation that's causing you fear? What's the situation that seems to be the source of your pain? That is where your healing is. That is where your opportunity to do this inner shift is. So don't deny the classroom that is your life, but use it. Use this classroom that is your life to awaken to your truth. This is all that we're really here for. And all we have to do is just keep asking for help and turning it over to that light within. We're all going to get there, because we all are there in truth.
Yes, that's the beauty of it. It is already over, finished, done, in the can, and probably disposed of by now. Gone through the trash compactor. Anyway, it was a delightful discussion with you guys this morning. We're pushing now toward 10:50 a.m. I know you've got adventures that you have to dash off to, but we do have an imminent gathering happening up in Glencoe, as far as Glenview, pardon me, as far as our next collaboration, where we all come together and share A Course in Miracles. You want to illuminate us on that one, Barret?
Yes, it is called An Afternoon with the Course, Exploring the Course in Miracles. It's going to be from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. on Sunday, June 10th at The Space, which is at 1800 West Dew Street in Suite D in Glenview. So we'd love to have you come. We're asking for $40, but if money is an issue, then it's no issue. Come anyway. And yeah, it's going to be the three of us, crazy guys that you've been hanging out with here for the last half an hour, as well as our friend Tom Kinley, who is the leader of the Course in Miracles group at Unity Chicago. So we're just going to be talking about the Course, each of us doing a segment and then joining together for Q&A. And and probably having a bunch of jokes too. So knowing how these things go. So I know Charlie's shocked. So so yeah, it'd be great to have you there. And before we get to that, Charlie and I are doing our monthly good news at the same space on Saturday, June 2nd, 10 a.m. So it'd be great to have you there for that one too. Our topic for that good news is what is. Beautiful sections within the workbook that ask the question, what is? And I think one of them that we're doing this time is what is the ego and what is creation? And I know there's a few others, what am I? So these are some pretty big meaty topics that we're gonna jump into and talk about. So yeah, and then more good things on the horizon. There's always more events. I'm doing a retreat in Boulder, Colorado in August. That it's like a weekend healing retreat. There'll be a lot of Course in Miracles and some other thought systems connected in for the healing journey that we're all on together. So yeah, and you can find out more about all this at my website, barrethadim.com, and you can find all kinds of great resources on A Course in Miracles at Chris's website, which is themiraclewithin.org.
Well, it was a delightful discussion, and we will be offering more thoughts, ideas, and hopefully inspired concepts to be embraced in 1 week. So get out there and have fun as we roll through a warm weekend in the Midwest.
All right. Happy Memorial Day, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone.
You bet. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.